So let's go out to our audience out there who's tuning in, who wants advice on, what advice would you give to somebody trying to get into your field? And Mia, I'm going to start this time with you.
Okay. I think uh, the best way, number one, is to start with the education. Juilliard has a really amazing kind of behind the scenes apprenticeship program that runs for the length of 9 months. I did that program and it was life changing, and I learned so much and made so many connections during that time. Uh, I You have to start with that because this is one of those kind of unforgiving. You show up, you don't know what you're doing. There's no time or patience to figure it out on the job. And so I would say to start with that. And then I am a person who thinks that, starting with theater is always kind of the best way for my particular field. So there's summer stock, there are operas. I did a bunch of operas, summer stock, things like that across the country. And that's it. Go into, opera, dance, all of those things and start there for multiple reasons. One, the budget is usually a lot less than film, so you will learn to get very creative with very limited resources. So once you make it to film, it's like, this is no struggle. Like we have an abundance, it's spoiled. So I say that for sure.
Leslie, what about for you? I mean, you've got such a versatile career. You've got a theatrical background. You write music. You appear in movies. What advice would you give?
Um, Mia's got the gems tonight. Listen to Mia would be my advice because starting with the education is, you know, key, and starting in the theater was key for me anyway. Both of those things, um, a lot. I love what you said about how you have an abundance. I mean, I find that working in TV and film, usually the people, even the actors, the performers that I find, that I kind of gravitate toward are the ones that start in the theater. Because if you've ever gotten a job that paid you $300 a week and jumped up and down and said thank you to the
Yeah.
heavens. You know what I mean? When you get on a film, when you get on a film and TV set, when you learn what you're gonna make in film and TV, you're like, "Are you serious? You guys are gonna pay?" So anyway, yeah, I think that Mia's got the great advice. Great.
All right, Sam. Aside from listening
Thank
to
you.
Mia, uh, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to write songs?
Well, it's got to be a passion. I mean, that's the first thing. I mean, it's incredibly hard to make a career out of making music, and so the passion has to be there, and the conviction has to be there, and you can't stop. You got to stick with it, and even if you give up for a time, you got to get back on and never stop. I mean, everyone's trajectory of their career is so radically different, and I think that if you just don't quit, and it is the truest passion of your heart to pursue that industry, um, and pursue that way of making a living, you just don't stop. And you never know when your timing is, but just don't stop. Don't quit.
Yeah. Josh, for somebody who wants to become a cinematographer, what would you say?
Oh, well, I think Sam has touched on it there really, and I think in any craft, it's really going to be about how long you focus on it. I think it's so. In other words, it better be something that you really love and are passionate about, because it's going to take all your energy and focus to kind of get there. It's taken all of mine. I've done nothing else for 11 years. Do you know what I mean? So other people might get there much quicker than that, but I think the determination comes from your desire to do it. And then I think when it specifically to cinematography, though, I was a bit of a technophobe. It took me a long time just to get my hands on the camera and get confident with that. So I think finding a safe space to fail, make stuff with your friends for the hell of making it, and get your hands dirty and get your hands on the camera and just shoot.
Love that. Alexandra, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to become a costume designer?
I would just add to what everybody has said. I think theatre is a great start because you learn collaboration, you learn storytelling, you learn to be pragmatic, and I think that's a huge part of design. To have the passion and to really keep your eyes open, to look at everything, and everybody, and just kind of harvest and know your world, know what you're looking at. Because I think with costume, even if it's a period film, you are always seeing it through the context of today. So to understand today and what that means, and how to bring that relevance into the world you're creating.
Yeah.
And
Sean?
not be afraid to fail. That's a huge thing that you said.
Yeah, I like that idea that not be afraid to fail. That's a good thing to sort of, I think, take away from this. Is my first job was carrying dead bug bodies around on Starship Troopers, and I just was so wowed by the whole set. I walked out there, I was like, I don't know where I'm going to land and all this, but this is cool. And I think that if people don't put so much pressure on themselves to find, and this is sort of, this kind of goes in all industries, but I think in the world of visual effects especially, but in all production, there's so many different where people can land. But if you're interested in visual effects or special effects, there's literally like 1,000 different jobs that you could find yourself being happy in. And don't worry about the fact that the first thing you're doing is not the thing you read about someone you're looking up to in a magazine. Like, you're going to get there, but you have to kind of get that first thing, look around, talk to people that are doing things that are interesting around you, and this sort of leapfrog. And if you're diligent and you do a good job, and in the world of visual effects, if you like math, if you're an artist, these are all things that sort of blend together and will serve you well. But yeah, I think it's just, don't be afraid. Just try stuff and get in there and work your way up. It will happen.
Yeah. Don, if somebody wants to become a production designer, what advice would you give them?
Well, I think the sage advice is pretty much what everybody has said so far. I mean, like, not unlike Sean, over 40 years ago, I began by sweeping floors in a set shop. And, I think a lot of it's about just getting your foot in the door, being willing to do task, and listening, paying attention and listening to what is said, listening to the inside of your heart, and, taking notice of what's around you and what's happening,
Yeah. Jan?
Well, the same here. Everyone has said it so well, but I'm a theater starter too, and also I was a bucket scrubber in a paint department of a horror movie. So there you go.
Alan? Shout out to theater tonight.
I also love what everybody's saying. It's wonderful to hear all this advice. And to add to it, I would say, from my perspective in editing, you are meant to have a point of view, but it's also part of it is being an interpreter. And I think if you can travel and meet other people from different cultures, different backgrounds, the more you can do that, the better. It'll serve you with your life experience, that you can bring an openness and an understanding and sort of a compassion. I think it's very important to have as much life experience as possible that you can bring to your work. And if you can't travel, watching through films and just accumulating a lot of information outside of your comfort zone from other areas and experiences would be helpful. Practically speaking, advice, I guess, to follow the way I did things would be, if you can afford not to do a job, maybe then you don't have to do the job. Or if it's so distasteful, you don't want to do it. But otherwise, find a way to try to take any opportunity you can, even if it doesn't seem ideal. Be patient. I think that was mentioned, because I found that simple things that I didn't really think I would like or want to do would lead to something else. And that's sort of the progression we've talked about. The one getting in the door, you might meet somebody down the hall, you might meet somebody on another project completely. Hopefully, small things will lead to other things, and it's just a matter of trying it with the technology. I think, as Josh mentioned, even in editing, you can get your hands on material and try to put something together and just hopefully show somebody. Try your best to get somebody to look at it, and be patient. If somebody doesn't respond right away, try somebody else and hope that it will happen, and just believe and be committed. And I think it takes a lot of determination, but it's very worth it. And just be positive, stay positive.
Yeah. Nicholas, do you want to add anything to that?
It's hard because everything which have been said, I feel totally agree with everything which have been said. But maybe also, I think when you do a work which is quite technical, like sound, is to try to find also a way to create a discussion, like to communicate with people without to use like very complex technical words, and trying to make it very simple, and also. Maybe to question your practice, all the time, and to continue to read, to see things, to meet people. I think imagination is coming from life, real life, So I think it's you need to continue. You need to feed yourself all the time, and also last thing, maybe to really try to go in the brain of the director you work with, to try really to go in, to go in their head, really deeply, and yes, and to do a lot of mistakes. I think to experiment a lot, I think, but I think it's more or less we are very, everything is very, we all said some very similar things. I think it seems like there is something. We have a lot of in common in that way,
That was such great insight, everybody, into advice and your process. And, it's been such an incredible evening honoring my artisans. I call you my artisans because I feel like, I love what you've just shared tonight.